Today's show dedicated to friends and friends of the show and friends of MAHA. First up, we have Peter Gillooly and Foster Coulson from TWC. We're going to talk a little bit about the origins of that and the medical freedom movement and their relationship with MAHA. Then Gary Brecka comes in. You all know Gary now. The ultimate human. He's going to talk about his encyclopedic experience of what's going on at Make America Healthy Again. And Dr. Stephanie Venn-Watson will return to talk a little bit more about the longevity nutrient, in particular fatty acids, pentadecanoic acid, cellular metabolism, oxidative stress on the lipid bilayer membranes, and what we can do to fight that off. Stephanie is at X on Meat Fatty 15, Meat, M-E-E-T. Gary Brecka is the Gary Brecka, B-R-E-C-K-A. Foster is Foster Coulson, C-O-U-L-S-O-N. These are all X handles. And TWC_health and Peter Gillooly. I'll spell it for you when we get back. Our laws as it pertains to substances are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for Christ's sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. Paleo Valley is always innovating, bringing you new products to market, of course, using doctor.com/Paleo Valley. You will get 15% off your first order and 20% off when you subscribe. And of course, one of the first things I promoted and consumed quite a bit of when the company joined our family of sponsors was the grass-fed and finished beef sticks. And that remains a fan favorite and a personal favorite as well, particularly the classic and the summer sausage. These delicious, chewy sticks have higher levels of omega-3 fatty acid than conventional beef. They're naturally fermented and contain 0 grams of sugar, 0 artificial preservatives, 0 gluten, 0 soy or corn. I eat them sometimes before a show or after show, between meal breaks. Certainly when I travel, I bring them everywhere. Use it before a workout so I don't get super hungry. All the protein stick varieties are superior to your typical jerky. Paleo Valley is a wonderful small business that promotes healthful eating and supports this show. Get 15% off your first order with drdo.com/Paleo Valley. All right, everybody. First up, Peter Gillooly and Foster Coulson. As I said, Peter is Peter Gillooly, Gillooly, and Foster is Foster Coulson. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Thank you for TWC. Thank you for all you do for medical freedom. I'm going to start with Foster, if you guys don't mind. And how did this happen, Foster? You woke up one day and went, I think I'm going to contribute to the progress of medicine in the United States. What happened?
Well, thanks for having us on your show today, Dr. Drew. And yeah, it was the heart of 2020 and things were raging. And I've always tried to be an entrepreneur that created solution-based options. And I saw when I looked around that just, there was nobody putting the customer, the patient first. And we were being forced to put these things in our bodies or do certain things from employers, the government. And so I wanted to create an option for people and a healthcare company that stood for something totally different, that stood for putting the power back in your hands to make decisions on your body because it's yours. And that was really the heart and the genesis of the wellness company. And when I met Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Harvey Risch, saw that this was a really amazing team that we're able to put together. And of course, Peter joined us early on as well. And that was really the beginning of it.
You know what else, Foster? I was telling my audience yesterday that, medical freedom, readiness, what Dr. Kelly Victor and I have been calling rational readiness, it has many sort of permutations to it. In that I recently heard, we were doing it because we thought people should have access to what they want. They should be ready. We put these kits together for people to have medical freedom to make choices for their family with telehealth backup. But I just read yesterday where there may be significant drug shortages coming. And so this readiness to take care of your family has many, many different layers to it. It's not just breaking free of a system that is going to be, it's cumbersome and expensive and loaded with all kinds of things you don't need, but you also may get stuck.
Yeah, I think we really, if anything, we live in uncertain times. I mean, look what's happening on a geopolitical level. And I think one of the things with shortages that we've seen is taking that control into your own hands and being prepared and having those, drugs and solutions at the ready in your own laundry room closet, I like to say. It just better prepares you for anything that comes, because we live in a world that I think is evolving rapidly at a very rapid pace. And you can never be too prepared to take your health in your own hands and take control of your own health. And that was the whole genesis of our medical emergency kits, is some of these drugs are difficult to get. And sometimes that's the difference between a positive outcome and a negative outcome, is how quickly you can get access to them. And so having those in our kit at the ready has made a tremendous impact on a lot of people's lives that we have firsthand experience knowing
Ours. About. Mine. Well, over the weekend, while I was reaching for it, and I have a very close friend got a cat bite this morning. She brought the Augmentin out of her kit. I said, go ahead, let's do it. A facial cat bite. And by the way, people don't know, cat bites have a bacteria called Pasteurella, and it can be extremely problematic. And if you get it on your face, you can get a brain infection within minutes. Wow. Yeah, and he had it near his orbit, and there was a very lax area where infections can get in very readily. What's that, Susan?
Oh, yeah, you get too close to the eyes or, ugh.
Yeah. So, I always tell people too, I mean, it's medical efficiency. Why would you want to go to an urgent care center and pay for all that infrastructure? It's completely like you don't know how to use mupirocin ointment. You've never used that before. You don't know how to put little ointment on your wound. You have to go to urgent care. I mean, it's so ridiculous. We infantilize patients and their families, but I've said enough of that. You want to talk a little bit about your background with firefighting and forestry, just a little bit, so people get a flavor of where you came from.
Yeah, so my family is a long line of entrepreneurs that started from my grandfather, and then my father came and built our aviation business, which we primarily focus on firefighting, and we help communities in a different way than how the wellness company helps the individual. But we've always come from, I think, a purpose-driven family of trying to make a difference. And so with what we do today, we're one of my family's group of companies. We're one of the largest special mission aviation firefighting companies out there today. And we go in when everybody else is fleeing and leaving to go try and help make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah. I mean, he's being modest. I mean, here in Southern California, you look up during firefighting season and it is his aircraft, and you're thanking God when they come around with that orange fire retardant. And there's your website. And we even saw it during the Palisades fire and stuff. I felt like I saw your people around then, and that's a rapid deployment.
Well, not a lot of
in
people,
nasty situations.
It is, and what not a lot of people talk about is, I know the EPA did a study in 2016. Do you know how many, the health cost associated with smoke from firefighters in the United States? In 2016, it was over $60 billion. I know the US Congress did a study in 2022. They estimate over $200 billion of health costs related and attributed to smoke from forest fires. Now, part of that's Canada's, and maybe we should put a tariff on that smoke. But it hasn't come through yet. But maybe one day
No.
Help offset it.
No. We need to begin setting up a territory for the great state of British Columbia and just bring it on into the United States. Forget the tariff.
They just need the government to agree. Apparently, that's all it takes.
You got to get a committee to set up a territory. I had an argument with the guy in this state who pushed through this legislation that was going to require electrical cars by 2035. And I said, in one fire season here, you're going to undo 10 years of your electric car in every vehicle being electric. Why aren't we doing forestry management? What is wrong with you? Are you worried about CO2 or are you not worried about it? If you're actually worried about CO2 and in fact just not telling people how to live their life, which seemed more his concern, you should be really dealing with the forestry situation in this state.
The power of the lobbyists. They're trying to get rid of gas burners to go to electric burners because that's what's going to save America. That's what's going to save the world from global warming.
Yeah. And let me bring Peter in. Peter, is ridiculous. Peter is your CEO, and Peter, you got recruited and you formed this company. I'm going to guess you saw what I saw when I first got involved with TWC. Was like, oh my God, this is such a good idea. Medical freedom is a really important topic now.
Well, yeah, actually, Drew, looking back, it was a little bit of a crazy idea at the time. And I think the thing that Foster and I maybe most resonated was we were scratching our own itch. We both felt that there was a big gap in the market. We didn't know how many other people out there also felt the same way. But fortunately, it's been a much larger number than we can anticipate. And Drew, I don't know if you know this. Did you know that less than 5% of healthcare spending in America is on preventative care? Does that seem a little backwards to you?
This is our next topic, which is your support for MAHA and what we're trying to do to improve the health so we're not. Look, there's so many. The problem with our healthcare system is we don't do enough leading into trouble with the healthcare, and then we do too much at the end of life where there's no hope of anything useful to be done. Right. We get everything wrong in this country. We get the worst of all possible worlds.
100%. And if you're a rational entrepreneur here looking to start a company in the healthcare space, you don't focus on preventative care, Drew, because that doesn't pay. But we found a way that actually resonates with Americans. And I think the silver lining coming out of the pandemic was that people are finally starting to take their health more seriously. They maybe grew a little bit more disillusioned with their primary care physician that they've been taking advice blindly from for the past 40 years. And they wanted to be educated. And I think, it's great doctors like you who are out there, preaching the gospel of whole life health and all the different aspects and dimensions of health besides traditional allopathic medicine or emergency medicine. Most Americans' primary care physician, Drew, it's their ER doctor. That's not good.
No, that's absolutely correct. That is the reason they don't trust. And the ER doctor was following the commands of the hospital, who was following the commands of the centralized forces in the government. It is the worst form of healthcare. But let's talk about what TWC has in terms of these health maintenance, health sustaining, longevity products. I mean, you guys talk to people a little bit about how carefully. I know this is I'm going to tell people that Peter is a chemical engineer by training and business, but his engineering background is figured in importantly in the products at TWC. So talk about what you're proud of there, what you have, what you've done to help both improve health and longevity.
It's a great question. And you've talked about some of these products before on the show. So I won't go too deeply into things like our Spike Detox. I mean, that was really one of those products that we didn't know if that was going to be a flash in the pan, but it turned out that, the world is still healing from the repercussions of the pandemic. And I anticipate there's going to be much more to come there. But I think a founding principle, Drew, that we try to abide by is science-based, right? Which might be a novel concept to some, but we want to see research on every single ingredient that we put in our supplements. And I want our chief medical board to really look at those studies and say yay or nay. Because if they wouldn't take it, why should anybody else? And I really think that that's been a powerful piece of guiding light that we've followed here as we've designed our products.
If we the other important guiding light is that board you put together is just incredible. I've learned so much from. You mentioned, I guess Foster mentioned Dr. McCullough and Dr. Reich already, but so many board members have so much to offer. It's been a wonderful thing to be a part of.
It really has, and the medical board was instrumental in building our emergency kit line. We currently have 8 separate kits that handle, I believe, over 100 different medical conditions, which is just astonishing. And the reports we've gotten back from patients is honestly mind-blowing. I mean, how many people's lives have been saved, literally saved, from having these kits in their home, as Foster mentioned. But, we have very innovative weight loss products. We're investing actively in IP now because we really see some opportunities to differentiate ourselves on the delivery and modalities that you're able to take supplements and other medications. Not everything needs to be in a pill that you swallow or an injection that goes into your abdomen.
Do a little more. I'm not sure if when you were, that's a little cryptic for the average person. Give us a little more.
Great question. So we have been actively looking at a technology called Aquazome that we've been piloting in our drop product. It's as well in our Smile toothpaste and our hair loss product Roots. Essentially, it's a two-step process. We nanotize the molecules. So that sounds very kind of cryptic, I know, but to make it in layman's terms, if you're taking a supplement, the cell needs to have molecules that are about the size of a golf ball that can get into a golf hole. It's sort of a metaphor. If you're taking a supplement, the molecules that you're absorbing are roughly, clumps of that's half a mile long. So you're just not going to get a lot of absorption into your cells. So we're able to nanotize these molecules and really dissolve them in a liquid media and then protect them with a liposomal technology so that if you're swallowing them, they can pass through the GI system and get to the small intestine where they're actually absorbed versus getting degraded in the GI tract.
And we promoted today that we're going to talk a little bit about MAHA. And before those of you watched the little tape rolling into these interviews, I was interviewing RFK Jr. at the executive building of the White House. And how do you feel MAHA's doing it? They've got a tiger by the tail. I mean, I keep urging people to be patient. It's so complicated, and they're moving on so many fronts that it's easy to get frustrated if you have your particular a thing that, you're particularly concerned about they haven't gotten to yet. It can be very frustrating.
It's a complicated question. And I feel like we were MAHA before MAHA had a name. And look, I think what MAHA is doing on the food spectrum is great. And we all know that food is a large determinant of health in the United States, but it's not the only determinant. And I think showing the public some long-term strategic pillars. And I think that would go a long way in helping people understand why they should continue to back and support MAHA. I think if you ask even MAHA supporters, Drew, I don't think 9 out of 10 of them would tell you what success looks like when it comes to make America healthy again. What do we expect to achieve within the next 3 years under the Trump administration with this program? So personally, I think, it's food, it's getting out some common sense exercise and incentivizing, your insurance companies and employers to really get their employees moving and active and healthy because we live a sedentary lifestyle. And then working at how can we promote maybe some alternatives to the traditional allopathic route? Because again, rather than having a reactive healthcare system that only steps in when a patient is so sick that they're forced to go to a doctor, how can we get patients everywhere, people everywhere, on different regimens and programs that are tailored and customized to their health needs that are going to keep them from getting to the hospital in the first place? And I would really like to see MAHA address these things and draw some lines in the ground about what they actually want to achieve on these fronts.
I think that's a good idea. And again, if you asked what do you want them to achieve or what have they achieved, you're going to pick your favorite topic. And the average person is going to think, well, I wanted that to change. But I also worry about them moving too far away from science. They are a major funder of medical science, medical research, as well as the HHS is over a giant organization, which is Medicare, Medicaid, and this is, determining how we deliver healthcare in this country. I mean, that stuff, and most people don't even understand. It's too complicated for the average person to understand. They've got to be very clear about what they want to do there, almost as a kind of a separate topic. I want to talk back to Foster again. Go ahead, finish Peter first, then I want to talk to Foster.
I was just going to say one comment on that. I think one thing that MAHA could do on that front is just expose how incestuous the research and the industry is when it comes to healthcare, and try to remove that conflict of interest. I think that would go a long way.
I'm so interested that you missed this too. Jay Bhattacharya delivered something 3 days ago that everybody missed. Everybody missed it. And I thought, oh my God, he is so smart. He's really got this right. He said exactly what you're saying. There is an incestuousness with the drug approval process, but more importantly, the editorial process of the major medical journals has been adulterated. And because phase 3 trials are so expensive, the pharmaceutical companies are the ones funding the trials that end up in these major journals. So he said, no longer are you going to determine what the standard is by who publishes your article. In other words, just because it was in the NEJM, just because it was in Nature, that should be meaningless going forward. What we're going to establish is a standard of reproducibility. And if you can reproduce something 5 times, 10 times in various journals, that takes away some of that editorial distortion. And I thought, oh man, that is exactly what we got to do. We have to, I don't know how he intends to operationalize that, but that is a major, major step towards taking the teeth away from what's getting published in these journals that have control over everything now.
I could not agree more, Drew.
Yeah. Foster, food. What are you guys doing with food? This is something you're very excited about, I know, and I want to give you a chance to talk about it.
I do get excited about food. I'm a food person. No, look, it's been great. I mean, Dr. Drew, to watch what Walmart's doing, eliminating synthetic dyes, following announcements from Kraft and General Mills and Kellogg and Whole Foods. It's wonderful. That's part of the reason why we launched Wellness Farms, because we wanted to be able to offer really great. No, those are in hot dogs. No, those are in hot dogs. Those are in hot dogs. But I think the greater point is, and the next phase of our company is 76% of Americans are dealing with one or more chronic disease, or 50% are dealing with two or more. Never mind, I believe it was a UCLA health study that over 50% of children, I think 3 to 17, are dealing with at least one chronic health condition. We need to move out of a phase that are focused on treating disease, and we need to start focusing on how do you prevent the disease. And I think for us, that's really the next phase of our company at the Wellness Company, is getting into more disease prevention. And a lot of it is what you put in your body, how much you move, right? What you drink. All of those things are huge components to that. And so we're very focused now between a lot of our natural health products and a lot of our great food products, and a lot more coming down the pipeline, trying to bring those to customers to try and get, I think, in front of this systemic issue that we're dealing with here.
Speaking of that, did you see Del Bigtree's study, or his documentary now, An Inconvenient Study? Have you heard about this?
I haven't watched it yet. No, I've heard a lot of really great reviews from it.
Yeah, Dr. McCullough is in it, and it is rather stunning. And it's I read the article that's in sort of the centerpiece of the controversy, and it's a good article. It's not a great article. It's got you could take it apart, but it definitely shows a strong signal for chronic health issues in completely vaccinated versus completely unvaccinated kids, and that's another area of concern, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've probably, most of us, some of us, whether you acknowledge it or not, have probably had people close to them that have dealt with those types of reactions. I know personally, I've lived through that with people in my family as well, and it's scary, and you do notice a big difference. And I think the way that RFK is trying to tackle the childhood vaccine schedule, I think, is very noble, and I think it's a very important thing to be spending time on, because with a lot of the studies and data coming out now, I mean, it's scary what you're doing to your child who you're trying to protect. And that's your role as a parent.
Yeah.
And then you find out now after the fact that, you could be potentially creating much more longer term health effects.
Yeah, it's mortifying for parents. Peter, this study, you might want to look at it. It really is a good study that shows this rather strong signal. And apparently there are 4 others out there that have a similar issue associated with them. I just hope we get some good science. To me, the thing you said, it's scary, or you may use some word about it's mortifying. What's mortifying to me is the mandates. Mandates are mortifying to me. This is where it's the opposite of what I thought this country was about, certainly the opposite of medical freedom. And Peter, I'll ask you, were you aware that 88 countries have no mandates for childhood vaccines, including most of Western Europe and all of Scandinavia? Only 2 of 5 communist countries. Only 2 of 5 communist countries have mandates. China does not have a mandate for childhood vaccines. We've gotten so far away from what medicine was supposed to be in this country. I thought. What do you think? Well, there's the study.
I think the thing we need to know is that vaccines and chemotherapy are the only two types of products that are allowed to be commissionable products to doctors. And I think that drives a lot of the problem. And look, Foster and I are both fathers of young children. I know, Drew, you're a recent grandfather, important choice about your granddaughter's health. And, speaking from my personal opinion, we brought my daughter in urgent care after she took a spill playing tennis. And I was scolded by this recent med school grad because she was not up to date in her vaccine schedule. And, my wife had to kindly show me out of the room, but it goes to show you that this is a major problem. This is a major problem that we can't access basic services in some states if your child is not vaccinated. It's not right and it's not American.
Gentlemen, I appreciate you being here today and sharing your thoughts. I appreciate the not just the effort that you both put into the wellness company, TWC, but the sort of genius inventing this company and executing so much that has ended up with the quality of something that I'm personally proud to be a part of. And I have to shake my head if anybody doesn't think this is a good idea, what we're doing. We're trying to make people free, ready, save money, have healthcare that's efficient, and help people stay healthy. I mean, why these things are controversial or anybody would contemplate not supporting these ideas is something that is mystifying to me. But I thank you both. I'll give you each a chance to, on the way out, tell us where you'd like people to go and what your parting thoughts are. Peter first.
You can find me at Peter Gillooly on X or check out our website at twc.health. And Drew, I just can't thank you enough for carrying this banner for so long and continuing to be the beacon of truth that you have. And I think, I hope more doctors, frankly, step up.
Awesome. I mirror that. And again, Dr. Drew, it's wonderful to have you a part of our team. And thank you for inviting us on today. And thank you.
You betcha. Thank you, guys. We'll talk soon. Gentlemen. All right, coming up, the great Brecka, the ultimate human. You guys know Gary. Gary is a supporter of the wellness company as well, and is a supporter of MAHA. We're going to talk about his relationship with MAHA, and after that, Stephanie Venn will talk about her longevity nutrient, which was discovered in her research as a veterinarian, and she has her book. Let's put that up, Caleb, as well. The longevity nutrient. We'll get the name. There we are. The longevity nutrient. Be sure to read that book. It is a very readable. It's got great science in it that is readable, which is a very hard thing to do. It's accurate, good, thorough science that you can easily digest. Right back with Gary Brecka after this. I've spent most of my career dealing with illnesses that shorten life, and now we have ways to extend it and extend wellness. I've been working with the team over at V-Shred to develop a product that has everything I want in a longevity supplement. NR Boost has nicotinamide riboside. You know how metal can rust? Well, your body behaves in a similar way. It's mediated through something called NAD. NAD falls as we age, so we're less able to fight off that oxidative process. We oxidize much like that metal. And NAD fights it, but nicotinamide riboside elevates NAD so we can push back on those oxidative stressors, improving health, improving longevity. The other product is Senosync, has fisetin, one of the key molecules to fight off zombie cells, and we've added resveratrol to that, which is a well-known anti-aging antioxidant again. I don't like supplements that have a ton of ingredients. To me, it suggests that none of it's working. When I prescribe a medication, I prescribe that medicine because I expect that to work. That is exactly what I've done with these products. And I want you to go to drdrew.com/vshredmd for 10% off. Again, that is drdrew.com/vshredmd. The wellness company knows that taking charge of your family's healthcare is a top priority, and being rationally ready, and who knows what the future will hold for us. Now, TWC has a service to cover your family's medical needs, including and especially prevention. For just $100 a month, the One Wellness Elite membership includes 2 free medical-grade nutraceuticals per month, free prescriptions for over 800 of the most common medications, access to concierge telemedicine, available at a moment's notice, and a 15% discount on all supplements and the emergency kits. 15% off the emergency kits. That's quite a saving. So if you're spending $100 or more on supplements and meds every month, this plan will already save you money. If you sign up for a year, you'll save $200. And when you use the link, drdrew.com/TWC, you'll get 10% off the first payment to the One Wellness Elite membership. Check out One Wellness at drdrew.com/TWC and get 10% off your first payment. drdrew.com/TWC. It's all there. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid, it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15.
That's brilliant. And thank you, Drew. Where's Dr. Drew? Where is he? Dr. Drew. Dr. Drew.
So weird. Every time I see that, it's like, ugh.
The way he says it, it's like, Dr. Drew.
Well, it went on for a little while because he had trouble finding me. I was sort of standing on the side.
He waited
there.
for you.
Oh no, he was not going to stop until he found me, and we talked from the stage, and then he called me up there, and he called me. You saw what he did with the European leaders the other day. It was the same exact playbook, and he goes, "We did some great TV, didn't we?" And I was thinking to myself, I don't remember that. And then I thought later, I thought, no, but listen, later I thought, oh, that's right. I judged the Miss USA contest for him and had dinner with him the night before, 15 years ago. With Martha Stewart. And he and Melania were sitting right behind me as I was doing my judging. And
so you were on TV with him.
Yes, we did some TV. We did some TV.
It was good TV.
Yeah, no, it was good TV. And it was my narrow thinking that I didn't realize what he was talking about.
My wife and I, we're rewatching Friends at night as like our nighttime show, that old, the old series from the 90s. And the amount of times that they reference Donald Trump in that show just randomly, having no idea that 30, 40 years later, he'd be president of the country.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Yes, he had many lives, lived many lives. One was as a television, host, but he before, I think it was well before The Apprentice, he bought the Miss USA pageant and then shepherded it. And then I bought Miss Universe too. And then he sold it, so whatever. It was a good business for him. Any event, Gary Brecka. Let's get Gary in here. You can follow Gary, the Gary Brecka on X, also theultimatehuman.com. Gary, I appreciate you being here so much. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too, Drew.
So let's first talk about where people can find you, what you're working on right now. You and I have talked briefly about that hydrogen product, if you want to talk about that, but you tell me.
So you can find me at theultimatehuman.com, or you can find me on Instagram, just my first and last name at Gary Brecka, Brecka. And all I do is teach on these sites. And you want to talk about hydrogen. I think hydrogen is one of the greatest discoveries of this millennia. I mean, that molecule has been around for centuries. Obviously, it's the smallest, lightest element in the universe. But we know now that hydrogen is one of the only selective antioxidants in the human body. And by selective antioxidant, very often we think about oxidation as being a bad thing. but a certain amount of oxidation is a good thing. We have lots of oxidative free radicals in the body. An oxygen singlet, single molecule of oxygen, can be very beneficial, obviously, or it can be extremely detrimental. It causes oxidative stress. The same happens with oxidative stressors like superoxide until it becomes something called superoxide dismutase, hydrogen peroxide. There are some radicals in the body like the hydroxyl free radical that have no known benefits in human beings. And the interesting thing about hydrogen gas, taking an elemental magnesium tablet and dropping it into hydrogen water and allowing it to effervesce into hydrogen gas and then drinking that, is that hydrogen molecule will actually cross the blood-brain barrier and it will restore something called redox homeostasis, which means it suppresses oxidation down to a neutral level and raises inflammation up to a neutral level. No other antioxidant does that. Antioxidants just suppress oxidation, and very often that can be a bad thing. Too much vitamin C is a bad thing. Too many antioxidants is actually very detrimental for cellular health. So that's why I'm such a huge fan of hydrogen tablets.
You mentioned the hydroxyl groups. Is the hydrogen pushing the stoichiometry of hydroxyls in a certain direction? Is that why you brought that up?
Yeah. So what it'll do is it will actually neutralize a hydroxyl group. So it cancels out the hydroxyl group, takes that to zero, but it takes oxygen singlets, hydrogen peroxide, superoxide, all of these other antioxidants, and actually restores them into balance. It uses a pathway, not to get too scientific on you, but it uses a pathway in our cellular DNA called the NRF2 pathway. Essentially what this does is it uses the intelligence of our DNA to regulate oxidation. And this is a perfect storm because now you have the DNA that says, well, maybe we need glutathione, the most powerful antioxidant in the human body. It's actually manufactured in the liver. Every single cell in your body contains glutathione. So if you're deficient in this molecule, you have a very difficult time eliminating waste from the body. Not waste in the form of stool or urine, but cellular waste. And cellular waste is like the exhaust from an engine. It will back up and eventually blow the engine. Early onset neurodegenerative disorders, inflammatory disorders in the brain, neuropathic disorders. These all have a common root in inflammation, but over-suppressing inflammation is a very bad thing. So using an intelligent molecule, this really spectacular molecule, hydrogen, which 10% of our body weight is hydrogen. It's harmless to human beings. Putting an excess of this molecule into the body has just profound effects on inflammation, circulation. If you take one of those elemental magnesium tablets and drop it into water, and you drink it when that water effervesces into hydrogen gas, the lights immediately come on. So people that suffer from brain fog, poor focus and concentration, poor waking energy, this is game changers for them. I'm 2 days now into a 3-day water fast. So here's my food right here. Some spring water. And, I put hydrogen tablets into that water and I can actually just feel my brain firing.
I saw you talking about Repatha and the LP(a) conundrum. I forget who you were talking to, but and this is a way of down-regulating the production of LP(a) essentially, or increasing its degradation. But one thing that I was thinking when I saw that interview that your guest did not mention is that it turns out LP(a) is very much sensitive to insulin resistance and the glycemic pathways, and that if you can get sugar out of your system and carbs generally, you can have a really it affects. We don't talk about how it affects the lipid system, but it does.
Oh, of course it does. I mean, most people think that the primary role of insulin is to lower blood sugar. That's actually not true. The primary role of insulin is to block any other form of energy use in the body, which means that when insulin is high, you can't mobilize and metabolize fat. To a very small degree, you can. So people that have the highest blood fat, triglyceride, eat the most sugar, because when you eat a high glycemic diet, your insulin is high. And when your insulin is high, your triglycerides rise. And if you looked at the ratio between triglyceride and cholesterol, which is a much better predictor of cardiovascular disease than LDL cholesterol on its own. In fact, I've challenged lots of the medical media to provide me any evidence of the link between LDL cholesterol on its own and cardiovascular disease. Cholesterol is sort of like a fireman. It gets called to the site of inflammation. It gets called to the site of endothelial damage to the lining of our arteries. And the main cause of that is insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is like the first domino to fall. And in human beings, very rarely do you have multiple systems fail at the same time. I have a very difficult time believing that people have multiple pathologies going on at the same time in the human body, multiple autoimmune diseases, multiple mental illnesses or mood disorders. Generally, one thing goes wrong that causes everything. And when you can get back to the root of that cause, you can fix everything. And, we believe this in plant physiology. If you had a leaf rotting in a palm tree and you called a true arborist or a true botanist out to your house, they wouldn't even touch the leaf, right? They would core test the soil. And they would say, you know what, Drew, there's no nitrogen in this soil. And they would add nitrogen to the soil and the leaf would heal. Human beings are no different. Very often the pathologies that we suffer from are nutrient deficiencies. If I put up a chart of your cellular biology, very confusing looking chart, what's called your methylation pathways, and you were to look at this really vast myriad, this collective of communities that our cells live in, because, and that's another mistake we make in modern medicine, we study things in isolation. We assume that when we take a cell out of a laboratory and put it back in the body, it's going to behave the same way, and it doesn't. We behave in communities just like our cells do. And so when you look at this vast myriad, this complicated maze of cellular interactions in the human body, the fascinating thing about it is if you were to blow these charts up, virtually every one of your listeners right now would recognize the names of everything on that chart. They are common vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and nutrients. And we have become so nutrient depleted because our soil has become depleted. A tablespoon of good topsoil has more of a microbiome than there are human beings on the surface of the earth. So it has more microbes than there are human beings on the planet in a single tablespoon. And so the depletion of our soil has made us nutrient deficient. And nutrient deficiencies lead to the expression of disease. And then we're down here treating the expression of the disease, the hypertension, the autoimmune condition, the weight gain, the water retention, the brain fog, the poor focus and concentration, the waking mind at night when you go to bed to sleep. Instead of looking for what nutrient deficiency could this body have that could be causing the expression of this disease.
I guess it was your podcast I was watching that interview on. Where can we see that podcast?
So I've done a lot of podcasts. You can go to theultimatehuman.com, look for the podcast on methylation, because methylation is the process that our body goes through to take all of the raw material that enters our body and convert it into the usable form. So the human body is very much like a vehicle. We pull crude oil out of the ground, but you cannot put crude oil into your gas tank because the car doesn't understand that fuel source. Crude oil has to be converted, has to be refined into gasoline, and then the car can run. The human body is no different. We put all kinds of compounds into the human body, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, proteins, fats, carbohydrates. We put these things into the human body, but they're not used in the format that we put them in. They have to be converted through a process called methylation, so the body recognizes them and can use them. For example, folic acid is a completely useless nutrient in the human body until it is converted to methylfolate. That's what the body can use. In fact, the US FDA just approved the first nutrient, folinic acid, in a prescription strength as a treatment for neurodevelopmental disorders and autism. And this is a nutrient, right? Because they realized that many of these kids and many of these neurodevelopmental deficiencies are linked to nutrient deficiencies. But they made a prescription, so Medicaid and Medicare would cover it, so people could get healthcare coverage for it. But it is essentially a God-given nutrient, which is why there's no substitute for diet, lifestyle, and spiritual well-being.
Yeah, it was used for many years as a rescue molecule in chemotherapies of various types.
Very true.
Now, yeah. So let's talk about MAHA and sort of the attacks that they keep coming under for reasons I find mystifying. That why somebody who's going in and trying to help a country be healthier and spend less on healthcare and be more efficient. And I mean, there's a I don't know if you can see this next to you on our screen, but going after everything, including what he chooses to work out on, which is the most bizarre thing in the world to me. Why didn't they talk about
people are not even working out? Who cares what you work out?
Are they stretchy jeans or are they linen? What kind of jeans are those? What the hell difference does that make?
That's when you have absolutely another possible point to make. You got to go after the genes. It's fascinating what's going on in MAHA, and all progress requires change, and change creates enemies. Yep. And so you have a lot of progress happening in a very short period of time. And the status quo the cabal at the CDC and the FDA and the ACIP do not like change. MAHA has done wonders to get corporate corruption out of our public policy makers, our public policy nutritional research. 74% of our nutritional research is funded by big food and big pharma. And so what do you end up with? You end up with a food pyramid.
Could it be otherwise? Well,
it says that Lucky Charms is more nutritious than grass-fed steak.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yes.
And that, food dyes have no metabolic deficit in the human body, and that petroleum-based food dyes are fine, and that seed oils are safe for you. And, so first, to initiate this kind of progress, we have to make massive change. One of the things that MAHA has done, there's a myriad of things that it's done, but one of the things that it's done is it has removed the corporate corruption, the corporate captured scientists from our public policy makers. And, these kinds of shakeups in the ACIP, which makes vaccine recommendations, in the CDC and the FDA, they're going to cause massive enemies and massive pushback, because the status quo was a very profitable status quo. I mean, we spend $5 trillion a year on healthcare, disease maintenance, and symptom management. We spend virtually no money on prevention, diet, lifestyle, spiritual well-being, nutrition, mobility. Those are never prescribed, but they are actually medicine. We have data on this too. If you look at the big data, you look at the blue zones, there's no continuity between diet and the blue zones. You go from high carbohydrate diets in Sardinia with extended life expectancies to very high meat consumption in Singapore with extended life expectancies to very high fatty fish and oil consumption in the Mediterranean, very long life expectancies. The one common thread between all of these areas, and we could learn a lot from this, is the absence of processed foods. There are none of these regions where you have centenarianism and hypercentenarianism, where you have the presence of processed foods. The two non-exchangeables are even more interesting. Sense of community and purpose, meaning faith, sense of community, real connection. Connection is medicine, connection with each other, connection with Mother Nature, and mobility into later in life. So the foundation of longevity, we know, is sleep, food, and mobility. We also know through the same data set that sitting is the new smoking. Sedentary lifestyle is the leading cause of all-cause mortality. We've got to stop telling grandma not to go outside, it's too hot, not to go outside, it's too cold, just to lay down, to relax, to eat at the first pang of hunger. This destroys our natural defense mechanisms. And so I think the revolution going on at MAHA, and there have been some big, big wins, eradicating petroleum-based food dyes in our food system. These cause massive inflammation, and some of these are forever chemicals. The body has no enzymatic or degradation pathway to get rid of these things. They embed themselves in our cell membranes. They cause oxidative stress, atherosclerosis, arteriosclerosis, poor cell death, which is called autophagy. They cause cells to no longer be able to perform their function. These are nicknamed zombie cells, but they're called senescent cells. I was asked a really interesting question on a podcast the other day. Someone asked me, they said, Gary, if you were to put the top 50 leading experts in the world, the MDs, the PhDs, the researchers on longevity and anti-aging, and you were to ask them to agree on one theory of aging, what would it be? And I said, that's a really difficult question. But I think if they would all agree on the theory of immunofatigue, a slow, progressive overwhelming of the immune system. Our God-given innate and acquired immune system is the most intelligent being on the surface of Mother Earth. It has the capacity to police us and to defend us. When it's busy defending us, mold spores, mycotoxins, viruses, parasites, bacteria, all kinds of chemical laden substances we have in our food, it gets distracted and it stops policing us. This is when circulating tumor cells just slip by in our bloodstream. The common link of cancer is that all cancer of its form or origin was at one time a healthy cell. Its metabolism shifted. Why do we believe that a healthy cell can become unhealthy, but an unhealthy cell cannot become healthy? I find that patently false. So one of the things that MAHA starting to ask questions, and Bobby Kennedy and MAHA, I chair the MAHA Action, which is Bobby Kennedy's sort of public-private committee. And in MAHA Action, we're championing the things that Bobby is doing at Health and Human Services. And all of science, the variance of science is a question. Science is based on something called a hypothesis. You conduct a study, an outcome, as you very aptly pointed out that outcome should be repeatable and it should have the same result every single time. Think gravity, right? It acts on two objects exactly the same way. There is never a time that it doesn't do that. But simply by posing the question, what are the root causes of autism? Why haven't we done the same level of study on the vaccine, on safety of vaccines that we've done for other pharmaceutical agents? Just by posing the question, you get the pushback by saying, no, the science is fixed. It's absolute. We've driven a stake in the ground.
There's no fix.
If science were fixed, we would still be using leeches. We'd still be doing frontal lobotomies, which, by the way, the last frontal lobotomy was done in 1969, not the Dark Ages, right? Which is basically an ice pick through the eye, scrambling the frontal lobe of the brain.
Gary, I had a bunch of those patients. You got to remember, I worked at a psychiatric hospital for 40 years, and I was the new internist that arrived there in 1984 or something. And the first thing they handed me was all the debris from those days, which was a bunch of severely neurologically impaired patients who'd had cingulotomies and frontal lobotomies. They used to do psychosurgeries quite routinely. And the guy that invented the frontal lobotomy got the Nobel Prize in medicine. So we can be very wrong. They would do them at the bedside with an ice pick. Go look it up. It's disgusting.
I saw some of those. Yeah, it was absolutely frightening. I mean, if the science was fixed, OBGYNs wouldn't wash their hands before delivering a baby. So the point being, in fact, the first scientist, the first doctor to pose the theory of microbes was actually thrown in prison because his theories were so against the mainstream. So questioning the science is science. Questioning the hypothesis, asking for validity is science. And so we should be championing what Bobby Kennedy is doing at Health and Human Services. Also, canceling very dangerous gain of function research, pulling $500 million out of the mRNA vaccine research program, not mRNA research into disease and into cancer. That's something that gets floated around a lot, that he canceled cancer research and canceled disease research. That's patently false. We canceled mRNA vaccine research. We pulled the
No. They did not cancel mRNA vaccine research. They canceled mRNA vaccine research for respiratory viruses.
Yes, for respiratory viruses.
For which there is no need for a vaccine anyway. That's what he did. There's still lots of research going on for cancer mRNA targets, but that's being done worldwide. Yeah.
So a lot of these things take a little bit of a spin, and then they get fed through the media cabal, and the public takes this as gospel. Yeah, the science is over. The science is fixed. We shouldn't question, the science. We're anti-science for asking the question. You're actually pro-science for asking the question. If the science is fixed, it's repeatable and it's absolute. Again, think gravity. So there is no time where we should ever stop asking questions. And just by getting, the food dyes out of this, our food system, by 28 states signing on to ban sugary sodas and candies from the SNAP program. This did not snatch money from the underserved. It changed what you could use the money for. It changed it from being able to be used for, vapes and sugary sodas to whole foods, to more nutritious foods, because our most underserved are the worst fed. And this is what keeps them in the position that they're in. So it's very pro-humanity. Part of me thinks this is a spiritual revolution as much as it is a health revolution.
I hope that gets clear to everybody as time goes on, because that's a great way to describe it, as pro-humanity, and particularly supporting people that are, distressed economically. Those are the people that suffer the most, for sure. And lastly, you've been very kind with your time. I'm going to let you go in just a second. As it pertains to the issue of asking questions, science done, the best possible science is concerned with the truth. But anyone who does good science knows that you can never get to the truth. Humans can never know the truth. We can merely ascend to an approximation of the truth. Thus, even when we think we have something like the truth, it must still be questioned.
I agree with that. I wholeheartedly agree with that, Dr. Drew. That's exactly what's going on right now. Yeah. Simply by asking the question, the amount of vitriol. I get hundreds of millions of views every month across my social media platform. The vitriol that I got for accepting the chairmanship on MAHA was mind-numbing to me. I started making statements about getting physical education back in the public school system, and I was called a racist and a bigot and a sycophant. Some of them I had to actually Google. I didn't know what a sycophant was. So hats off for that one with some new names. But the truth is that there's no substitute for mobility, for connection, for whole food diet, for good sleep. This is what extends life. And the data is clear on that. We have data on that. My hat's off to Bobby Kennedy. He's in the fight of his lifetime. People like myself have committed the balance of our adult lifetime to really potentially have an influence on public policy, which is a legacy that most of us are willing to die on the hill for.
Well, I thank you for your service, and I thank you for your work, and I thank you more so for even being here. Bobby told me this is the best job he ever had. It's like he wants. This is the thing he's always wanted to do, and it
20
suits
years.
him. So,
yeah,
yep. And so here he is. And so let's hope he gets as much done as he possibly can. Gary, thank you so much. We'll look for you on X.
Thank you for having me.
Gary Brecka, Brecka. Talk to you very soon, my friend.
Talk to you soon, Dr. Drew.
All right. We're going to stay with the longevity topic, and we're going to talk about supplementation and longevity. The longevity nutrient, you can read about some of the stuff Gary and I were just talking about, in fact, in the book, The Longevity Nutrient, where Stephanie Venn-Watson, who is a scientist, a fine scientist, and a fine veterinarian who was responsible for the Navy's fleet of dolphins in San Diego. She's a careful scientist and clinician that was looking at these dolphins getting neurological disease and fatty liver disease, discovered that there was a fatty acid associated with that. She isolated that fatty acid and gave it to the dolphins, and she will tell you what happened next. Stephanie, welcome back.
Hi, Dr. Drew. It's wonderful to be here. So what happened next? That's where we were able to use advanced technology called metabolomics to figure out which small molecules predicted the healthiest aging dolphins. And as a result, we found it, like you said, C15. Pentadecanoic acid was a fatty acid that predicted the healthiest aging dolphins. Fast forward 10 years and 100 peer-reviewed studies since then. I loved the discussion you and Gary just had, the importance of repeating science and seeing the same results.
Yes.
Right. All of these studies, 100 peer-reviewed studies now, showing the benefits of C15. And the big surprise, again, just in line of what you were just talking about, was that C15 is not only a saturated fat, but it's a saturated fat that is present in which our primary source is butter and whole dairy fat.
So explain what a saturated fat is, because I'm not sure. People have heard of saturated fats, and then why, if we have it in butter, well, why aren't we eating more butter?
Well, maybe we should be eating some whole butter, but highest quality, of course, for the conversation. Yeah. So when we talk about, when we have heard about saturated fats, it's almost always been negative, right? So that we should avoid all saturated fats. And the best way to do that is to avoid butter and whole dairy fat. What we've learned is that there are actually two types of saturated fats. One is called an odd chain saturated fat, which means it has odd number of carbons, like C15, and even chain saturated fats that contain even carbons, like C14, C16. So interestingly, it's amazing how nature plays out, but these odd chain fats, especially C15 as this Goldilocks saturated fat, is anti-inflammatory, we'll talk about being protective against the cell and against this new form of cell death that was discovered, back in 2012. And the even chains are pro-inflammatory and have opposite effects. So higher amounts of even chains, higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease. Higher amounts of these odd chains, lower risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease. The problem with dairy fat is that you have both. So you have some levels of this odd chain, but much higher levels of the even chain saturated fats. And changes in our agricultural practices have also, driven this dichotomy even higher evens, less odds.
Is it worse in this country than other countries?
I think so. It was a great
how they shifted. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great discussion with regard to, talking about Sardinia, right? And that, in Sardinia, they exchanged a lot of their meat for cheeses. And those cheeses are locally made. So they're local, goats and sheep that feed on grass at high altitude. And that produces more C15 in their dairy fat compared to, let's say, a cow at sea level that is fed corn. And if a cow is fed corn, it has half as much C15 in it than if it's fed grass. So in the Western countries, at least in the United States, we are seeing a decline in C15 levels, even if you're drinking whole fat milk, which, a lot of people aren't drinking cow's milk even anymore, let alone whole fat cow's milk.
So that's where fatty 15 comes in. So take your fatty 15. I've been preaching about it for a while now, everybody. Go to doctor.com/fatty15. You should be supplementing with fatty 15. And we'll talk about some of the things that are the benefits in addition to the obvious replacement of this important nutrient. But the fact is, you mentioned this 2012 novel cell death. I suspect you're talking about ferroptosis?
That's right. Yeah. So, back in 2012, that there were scientists at Columbia University who discovered an entirely new way that our cells are dying called ferroptosis, exactly like you said, Dr. Drew. Previously, when we went to veterinary school, medical school, we learned there are 3 ways that our cells die: apoptosis, necrosis, and autophagy. And so this is a really big discovery that they found of an entirely new way that our cells were dying. We were discovering this in dolphins that same year in 2012. We published a paper about this phenomenon, not knowing at the time that it had a name, which was ferroptosis.
And talk about what that is and the importance of fighting against the oxidation of our cell membranes.
That's exactly it. So our cells surrounded by cell membranes, and our cell membranes are made of fatty acids. Fat has a lipid layer. And when we talk about our cells, we truly are what we eat. So the more polyunsaturated fatty acids we have, these are obviously, they have benefits, but because they have double bonds, they're susceptible to attack by oxygen, and that leads to this thing called lipid peroxidation. And that breaks our cells down. There's an entirely new form of cell death, right? This is called ferroptosis, in which the cell death is caused by increased oxidation of fats inside of our cell membrane because they're fragile. And then that combines with this strange iron that's showing up inside of the cell. So when you combine this lipid peroxidation with iron, it creates this massive amount of reactive oxygen species, takes out our mitochondria, and kills the cell. So under a microscope, it's a very distinct presentation. There are now over 20,000 papers on ferroptosis since that discovery in 2012. I mean, just incredible.
And I don't want people to confuse the iron that shows up in cellular metabolism with an iron supplement you might be required to take. This is something, it's the funny thing about, it's for instance, what I worry about with Alzheimer's research. They go, aluminum, it must be the aluminum because there's aluminum in the neurofibrillatory tangles. And I'm like, maybe, but not necessarily. Things show up in cellular metabolism from cellular metabolism that don't necessarily come from the outside or anywhere else.
That's right. So then it's the sleuthing of trying to figure out what exactly is going on. As humans, we're a mess, right? It's really hard to find out what's called the pathophysiology.
Wait, stop. I want people to understand what you just said. That I can always tell when a biologist knows what they're talking about because they will say something like that. Dr. Venn-Watson just said, humans, we're a mess biologically. It's just a mess. It's a buzzing, blooming mess. And that's correct. And that's somebody that knows biology. And then we try to say something meaningful from within that mess.
And so, what I should say from a study standpoint, if we're trying to understand changes in food, changes in diet that are causing negative or positive changes in our health, it's really hard to narrow it down because there's just so much diversity. And what's the source of what we're eating?
So much going on.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes. So, but with regard to, we were working with Navy dolphins, as you had mentioned. Navy dolphins have a very clean and clear diet of specific types of fish. They have the same healthcare. They have the same environment. So it was a much cleaner world to be able to understand. We saw the exact same things happening in the Navy dolphins as we're seeing in populations, this accelerated aging, the onset of fatty liver disease that's non-alcoholic, younger kids that are developing aging-associated diseases faster. We were seeing the same phenomenon in the dolphins, but it was a much cleaner picture. We were able to rapidly narrow down the cause of this ferroptosis, of this new form of cell death, was that the lack of C15. They had lost C15 in their diet because of a change in the type of fish they were being fed.
And longevity experts, you were telling me like last year caught on and got very excited about. I mean, really the leaders in longevity research have been effusive in their enthusiasm for C15.
That's right. So nothing like nature to deliver us a simple solution, right? That's right in front of us. But for example, Dr. Nicholas Shork, who is head of the NIH-funded Longevity Consortium, he's been in that role for over 20 years. So Dr. Nick has looked at all the different molecules that have been promising to enhance our longevity. And when I say enhance our longevity, I'm talking more about what's called a geroprotector, a molecule that can slow our aging rate to effectively stem the diseases that kill us, right? Versus it's not living to 200, right? It's about living as healthy as long as possible. And when Dr. Shork saw the science on C15, he said, Stav, this is going to qualify as a geroprotector, and he has shared with his colleagues at large conferences that there's no molecule that he has seen that has more science, robust science supporting its role in helping us live as long as possible, as healthy as possible, aka geroprotector, than C15, which is remarkable coming from him.
When you and I are always championing the fact that there are over 100 peer-reviewed studies. It's something I've never asked you. Were these your studies or a group study? Were there multiple researcher organizations looking at it? Who put these out?
Well, if it was me, then I think I'd have to say I'm 100.
That's what I thought. It seemed like a lot, but yeah, it seemed like an awful lot for even one group to be publishing. But okay, tell me more.
So here's the great part. You were just talking about with Gary Brecka, right, about the value of the importance of science when good science is done. In the early days, we had made this initial discovery. We put the stake in the ground for saying C15 meets the criteria of an essential fatty acid of a longevity enhancing molecule. And we did that with Dr. Shork as well. And then you let the world go do science on it, right? And to either prove or disprove what you did. And so now these 100 peer-reviewed studies, right. 6 are from us. The rest of those papers, and there's one new paper coming out about every 2 to 3 weeks now. All those other papers, Dr. Drew, are coming from independent teams throughout the world.
Great. So exciting. Oh my God, it's so exciting. I've never asked this question. What do you imagine is next for you guys? Do you have a sort of a vision where you're going?
Yeah, a lot of the science now is coming out around, the importance of, when we talk about finding an essential fatty acid, it's like finding a new vitamin, right? And we made that discovery. We've talked about that on the show. What's important is that other people are also picking up on it. And now we're recognizing the importance on not only C15 in our older years, because that's where we've been focused, but just as importantly in the youngest years. So the importance of knowing that mom's C15 levels are dependent upon how much C15 she eats. Baby C15 is dependent upon how much C15 mom gives baby via milk, her milk. And we now know that higher C15 is better body growth, better brain development. So I think what we're excited about is really being able to get C15 to to be able to fortify foods to democratize longevity and help ensure healthy aging for all at all ages.
And it may be my OCD, but I have this, I want to take more. I want to see more data on dosing. And because I just have a feeling more would be better. Not that I should take 5 tablets, but maybe 2. I don't know. You tell me. You seeing anything yet?
We are, many studies have shown dose dependent. And with regard to finding that sweet spot, the nice thing is you can test your C15 levels now. It's becoming more and more available that doctors can use, you can use. And we're showing that in some cases, the sweet spot is in the middle. So it's like taking this 1 to 2 capsules per day has the broadest amount of benefits. But if you're focusing more on things like heart health or cognitive health, we're seeing an improved activity at higher levels. So it may be tailored to what individual people need.
I'm convinced that I'm looking for I don't want any benefits. I want the longevity, right? But several of my family members have really had some subjective benefits, and I'm getting a little jealous. I'm thinking, maybe I want to take a little more, see if I can get the sleep or the brain or the energy or this stuff that I keep hearing about, because I know I'm improving my longevity, and that was my goal. Caleb, you have a question about Fatty 15. We've talked about the moms, the babies, the older folk. He's like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Caleb?
I constantly hear so many good things about Fatty 15, but now I'm actually curious, what about stuff for people that are closer to my age, like in their mid to early 30s, like late 20s, mid 30s,
40s.
Like, yeah, exactly.
We leave them alone. They're there.
I'm curious, what could it be doing for someone like around my age group?
So Caleb, you're really lucky because, like as described in the book, you're part of the what we're calling the broken generation. So
nice. You're so lucky. You're broken.
Yeah, it sounds very lucky.
So kids, you're no longer kids. They were people who were born maybe you're a little bit before that, but the 1990s and on, right? So when really the movement really started happening, where people, especially moms, were avoiding milk fat. That meant that babies were being born right into a C15 deficient world. Pediatricians started saying, if once your child turns 2 years old, they've got to go off whole fat milk. And that really drove this. And it's why we think, Caleb, we're seeing people in their 30s and 40s have a higher risk of aging associated conditions. That this may be part of the reason of that. So you're included too, Caleb. You should also be getting your C15. We didn't.
All right, I'm getting on it. Yeah, my longevity.
That's great. And we do have a lot of people when you move to, we say start with 1, but when you move to 2, we do have people that report new back. For me, my joint pain went away when I went to 2. So,
I had Crohn's disease.
That's what Susan said too. I'm going to do it. I'm increasing my dose. That's it, period. That's what's happening now. So
you saw it, you heard it all.
Well, I'll report back to you. And by the way, I don't really care that much if I feel better. I feel pretty good such as it is, but I really want to maintain this. I don't like the whole aging phenomenon. I've decided that the key subjective feature of aging is things being taken away from you, just one thing after another. Your hearing, your vision, your joint mobility, and your sleep it's just one thing after another. It's so annoying.
Yeah, and Dr. Drew, everyone is blown away anytime you give away your age. So we're all impressed. We're all aiming to be like you.
How many years have I been taking Fatty 15? It might have something to do with it. Every time I hear that, I'm thinking, I'm persuaded. I've been 4 or 5 years on Fatty 15. I'm 67. I'm 67 years of age, and if I look like this at 75. Then you can get excited because that shouldn't happen. So, but I'm still having all the usual medical stuff. I've got to go and have a basal cell removed next week and a whole big old Mohs surgery. So when people see me in about a week and a half, I'm going to be like, have a huge dressing on my head. It's going to be awesome.
You can say it's for Halloween.
Good idea.
You know what? I'll go with Frankenstein. I'll give the big. All right, Stephanie. Thank you as always for joining us and reviewing this material. It's such interesting science. You have a great. If people want to read more about it, is in the Longevity Nutrient. It's all laid out there. It's so. And I told you first time I read it, right? I told you. I said this is remarkable because it's so easy to read and it's all, the science is just there. And that is a very hard thing to do, to not feel like a textbook or, it feels more like a detective novel, right? You're watching something kind of unfold.
Thanks. Thank you. And I think you read it in a weekend, which was pretty impressive.
Well, I was familiar with the stuff, that you had in there, but I was like, oh yeah, this is like something anybody can read. This is going to be good. So do get it, do read about it. We should all have now that we can do things for longevity, people should have a familiarity with that science. It just seems to me. And as you're learning, nutrition is a key part of it. Stephanie Venn-Watson, thank you so much.
Great. Dr. Drew, always wonderful. Always wonderful to see you.
Cheers. All right. So coming up, everybody, what do we got here? I know we've got Peter Navarro. That's right. Next week, 2:00. He's written a book called I Went to Jail, So You Don't Have to. Aaron Series coming back. He's been under assault lately. Salty Crackers scheduled up to come back in again. We've got a lot coming because of my surgery next week. So we'll be here on Tuesday and Wednesday. So that is the 21st, 22nd. 23rd, I've got the surgery, and it's a little unclear when I'm going to be presentable again or when I'm allowed to return to work. Probably be about a week, but we'll see. We may get in before that. So hopefully I'll be here by the 27th for sure, maybe the 26th even. And we will see you tomorrow, on the 21st at 2 p.m. See you then. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.